Hi, everyone. This is Wendy. Greetings. My colleague Jessica Farrell and I are delighted to talk with you today about the Software Preservation Network, or SPN, as it is affectionately known. So I'm Wendy Hagenmaier, and I currently serve on the SPN Coordinating Committee, and I work as a digital archivist at Georgia Tech in Atlanta in the southeastern United States. So I will share a bit about SPN's mission and current activities, and then I'll pass the microphone to Jessica Farrell, SPN's community facilitator. So SPN is an independent, community-led membership association focused on ensuring long-term access to software. We work to create a space in which organizations and individuals from academia, government, cultural heritage, industry, and the public sphere can contribute their myriad skills towards software preservation. SPN is a coordinated, distributed effort focused on collective action that strives to support stakeholders in their local contexts. Our core values drive how we prioritize our efforts. Spearheaded by Jessica Meyerson and Zach Vowell, SPN was formed in 2016 during the Software Preservation Network Forum, where we created working groups and a community roadmap. Over the next several years, we articulated our mission and goals, partnered with our fiscal host, Educopia, and entered a seed-funded period in which we established governance and financial infrastructure. We're now in a period of growth and acceleration under a lightweight organizational model. So you might be wondering, where does SPN fit into the software preservation landscape? How might SPN connect to my work? Like the host of this wonderful gathering, Software Heritage, SPN is also focused on software longevity. Unlike Software Heritage, SPN is not a source code archive. SPN is focused on software preservation through collective action in three core areas: community engagement, infrastructure support, and knowledge generation. As we know, a great variety of diverse stakeholders are interested in software preservation. Just for example, there are research data management stakeholders investigating software reproducibility, archivists aiming to provide persistent access to software-dependent collections, historians seeking to share software stories, and the list goes on. When it comes to software preservation, these distinct stakeholders face similar challenges: legal questions, standards gaps, training needs, etc. These challenges become shared endeavors with the potential to bring together powerful coalitions of players who wouldn't normally collaborate. Because the players are so diverse, though, and because they face competing priorities, it takes significant community infrastructure to forge these coalitions and sustain them across time and space. This is where SPN comes in. SPN brings these stakeholders together into community, comprising organizational members, individuals from member and non-member organizations alike, working groups, Educopia community facilitation and support, sponsors, coordinating committee members, collaborations with allied organizations, and affiliated projects. Many of these community members are represented here today. SPN's current organizational members span from Australia to Canada to Scotland to across the United States. These community members have been busy working on projects that may be of interest and benefit to today's participants. So here's a quick look at a few, each of which exemplifies a core value of SPN. The Law and Policy Working Group just published 2 guides that explain how to provide access to software in the US and Canada by using library exceptions alongside fair use and fair dealing. SPN's law and policy work has been critical in advocating for the essential role of software preservation in effective digital stewardship. In keeping with SPN's aim to create an equitable community of practice, the Coordinating Committee recently adopted a code of conduct alongside a transparent process and team to activate the code. The Community Engagement Collaborative has fostered connection and inspiration through forums that bring together stakeholders from across the software preservation and video game worlds. The Metadata Working Group released its Software Metadata Recommended Format Guide earlier this year. The guide supports the sustainability of essential metadata and documentation work. Several SPN members explored access possibilities by participating in a recent hosted pilot with the Emulation as a Service Infrastructure Program of Work, an affiliated project. And a white paper forthcoming in November from the Research and Practice Working Group details findings from a study of software preservation services with recommendations that touch on all of SPN's values. You can find these projects and more on the resources page of SPN's website. As the coordinating committee reviews SPN's strategic goals and looks ahead, we hope to deepen connections with the broader software preservation community. And so, as I pass the mic to Jessica, I leave you with these questions. How can we continue to build connections among our work, nurturing the global software preservation community? Where can organizational efforts complement and strengthen each other? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thanks so much, Wendy. And I tried to keep up with all of the awesome resources that we were sharing, but it was tough. So please just visit that SPN resources link that I shared in the end there, and hopefully you can find all the great things that Wendy mentioned. And we'll definitely share our slides if we're able to share this with the organizers. So I'm Jess, I'm the community facilitator for the Software Preservation Network, and I'm going to share a little bit more about kind of what we've learned through our research and practice, right? And working all together. We hear so many important nuggets of information from the software preservation community all the time. So, you know, when we come into these spaces, we have software preservation practitioners discuss their current workflows and their future dreams, and we've observed several tensions that kind of complicate our vision of software preservation through values-forward collective action. One of these tensions is capacity. So it's not enough just to know what we're losing or gaining by collective action. We may all agree, yes, that collective action is the way to go. You know, we heard Roberto say earlier that it's better to move forward together rather than alone, even if that takes a little bit more time. So I think a lot of us across the field really agree on this idea, but there's constraints to it. So our local constituents and our local stewardship capacity shapes the nature of our commitment to software sustainability. So the capacity required to take collective action must actually exist. And that capacity is not just an individual's time. It's a total package that is a combination of time and labor, a vision and a commitment to work toward that vision together, trust for each other, and good morale and enthusiasm within the group. And all of those things are requirements in order for collective action to really be possible. So a big part of capacity is just everyone being on board and working towards similar goals and being excited about those goals. The next thing is what we're calling the squeeze. So at least in the United States, this may be a rather US-centric view, but practitioners tend to be squeezed in the middle of collective action. So many digital archivists like Wendy and others at universities across the United States and nonprofits and other museums and other types of organizations would love to spend a lot of time contributing to collective action through organizations like the Software Preservation Network. But they're faced with inadequate investment in digital curation, much less software curation. So, you know, even having just a preservation repository, much less a preservation repository that handles software. Increasing need to understand and engage with designated user communities, often with an eye to social justice. So there's competing priorities, right? There's preservation as one priority, but also this need to engage in different communities is a very big and important priority. There's no need for preservation without our user communities. And then the increasing complexity and scale of collected and curated materials. And these practitioners need strong leaders who can enable pathways to making progress on these competing priorities without perpetuating burnout, which is another big thing that we hear a lot from folks in the software preservation and digital curation world in the United States. And so the other tension that we observe is tooling. So while our tools necessarily become more specialized due to the complexity and scale that we are faced with, and therefore more difficult for any single organization to develop and maintain on their own, these tools also have to be placed among an increasingly crowded field of tools and services competing for organizational support. Even open source software, of course, requires community input and community development in order to be maintained. And this is, a tension at organizations where there's not a whole lot of time to contribute to those things. And then also, these tools have to be placed within the landscape of existing digital infrastructure maintained within each organization. So sure, we can build a tool that does great software preservation on its own in isolation, but how does that work with the average workflow at an organization? So both of these challenges are critical when considering how to move from a project to service or project to enterprise tool phase. And as we've been affiliated with the Emulation as a Service infrastructure project, we've really seen this and learned so much about it through that project. And we're also learning the boundaries of collective action. So in the Software Preservation Network, we believe that collective action is necessary to develop model workflows and best practices for software and other born digital material, and to address the tensions that we've seen around that goal that I've already laid out. And in our work in Emulation as a Service infrastructure with that affiliated project that we've talked about a little bit, we've sort of begun to map the boundaries of collective action. So the boundary between what a consortia or a service or an inter-organizational community of practice is in the best position to do versus what really has to start taking place locally, informed by local user constituencies for that organization and that community, institutional realities for that organization's capacity and resources. And now that we have gathered model software preservation workflows, model case studies for software preservation, model policies, the Software Preservation Network has helped receive exemptions to US copyright law. And the EASY platform has been built, it's real, it's funded, it continues to be funded. We just are wrapping up that pilot that Wendy was talking about earlier. So there's been a lot of engagement in that platform. We're now faced with this different challenge. So how do we resituate these collective outputs back into the very local, very specific context of cultural heritage institutions in ways that enable those same institutions to provide useful, sustainable emulation services? So since we're not actually collecting the software like software heritage is, like how can these things get infused back into local contexts? And our hope is, of course, that through SPN spaces where we're both swapping experiences with software preservation practices and building software preservation theory along the way, SPN members are hopefully taking these experiences back to their home institutions, and we'll see over time what happens with that. And so I want to leave you with a call to action here, as I love to do. So there's tons of ways that you can connect and collaborate with the Software Preservation Network. You can follow us on Twitter at SoftPres Network. You can join a working group. You don't have to be a member, a paying member of the organization to join a working group and contribute to the work that's happening there. You can subscribe to the public listserv. We have a bit.ly link there. We send announcements for public events there and a quarterly newsletter that gives you updates on what we're up to. And there's a contact form on our website. If you have an idea for an event that you'd like to partner on, some speakers you'd like to bring into the Software Preservation Network community, we're always happy to coordinate on those events. And you can see our community calendar as well. We try to make transparent what we're up to via that calendar so you can get an idea of all the different groups that exist when they meet and if it will work with your schedule. So that's all that we have for you today. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Jess. I'm the community facilitator for the Software Preservation Network. Thank you, Wendy, one of our star coordinating committee members who really helps out so much with the strategic direction of SPN. And we've enjoyed getting to share a little bit with you about our network today. So please stay in touch.